Good evening and welcome. Thank you for coming to our Lecture in Fine Arts event, I, Little Slave, a book talk with a very special guest, Dr. Boonsang Kamkeo. I'll let our other speaker introduce him formally, and this is Ka Lo. She's a UWMC alum, and I'm very proud to say that. I'm just amazed at this young woman's energy and insight, curiosity, and interest in the public good. I asked her just a short while ago how she got all these wheels in motion. Ka's known for getting a lot of wheels in motion. She also, I have full confession now, she works at the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service across the street in the building where I work. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jean Greenwood, the Lecture in Fine Arts Coordinator, as well as a Program Associate across the street. So Ka is a real bundle of energy and do-goodism and all that good stuff. We're very proud of her being an alumni here and now one of our employees. She's also a student at UWSP, completing her education degree. Ka stumbled upon Dr. Kamkeo's book in the bookstore. It started that simply. She was so riveted by his writing, his memoir, and his personal experience that she had to research a little further. She went on the web, she found some interviews with him, and she put all this together just from that spark of curiosity and his compelling narrative. And out of that, a year's worth of work and planning to get him here, we are very proud to be able to present him to you tonight to speak about his book and his experience. I'm also, as I mentioned, very proud of Ka. I'd like to give her a big thank you for doing all of that. Can't wait to see what she comes up next. Let me turn the mic over to her, and she will introduce Dr. Kamkeo. And without further ado.
Thanks, Jean. Well, I have to thank Jean too, because without Jean's help with this, I don't think this could have happened. So big thanks to Jean and Lecture in Fine Arts. A little bit about me. Like Jean said, I'm a student right now at University of Stevens Point, and I'm going for my teaching degree, but I'm also going for a history degree also. So hopefully I'll be teaching history in the future. And I want to teach the Cold War into the Vietnam War, and emphasis on General Vang Pau's troops, work with the CIA. So hopefully that's where I'll be in about 15 years. So, well, thank you everyone for coming, and I hope that you guys will find this presentation to be very uplifting and educational. And I like to write things out, so don't mind me. I'm going to read from this, what I wrote from this afternoon. I read Boonsang's book about 2 years ago. And before I read Boonsang's book, I had a lot of questions about my parents' past and my grandparents' past. I was sitting in my car when I'd gotten home from an 8-hour day, and I was thinking of the Ellis Island project that we all do in third grade. And I remember thinking back that when we did the project, my third grade teacher said to us that probably most of us had a relative that came through Ellis Island. Well, as a third grader, I knew that none of my relatives came through Ellis Island. We were given worksheets, and our homework was to go home and ask our parents about where we came from. I went home and I asked my mom what my grandparents' names were. I only have one living grandmother. And when I asked her how they got to the United States, in the best way she could for a third grader, she said they had crossed the Mekong River from Laos to Thailand, and then after they were sent to the United States. I asked about my dad, and my mom said she was unsure, but to ask him when he got home. When my dad got home, I asked him and he gave me his parents' names, and then I asked how he got here. Well, that's what I don't remember, because I don't remember if he told me or not. When I was in middle school, we went through another one of the Ellis Island projects, and we had to do this again, but on a larger scale. This time, I did not ask my dad, I just asked my mom, and I asked her again how my dad had arrived in the US. And she told me, but it was all very vague. And the story didn't stay with me. Because to this day, I still don't know the whole truth. But as a 29-year-old, I have my ideas. My dad, like most Hmong men who experienced the war, does not talk about it. He does not talk about anything before he arrived in the United States. But that's okay, I understand. Anyways, my Ellis Island story has a point, and the point I want to make is that if I ever have children, and they're going to do this Ellis Island project like every kid does, I think how sad would it be if they came to me and they asked me where they came from, and all I could tell them was that we were from Laos. How sad would that be? Our legacy would end with me. So I had to know more, and I had to find out more because I could not let myself and I could not let them down. I knew that going to my dad or my grandmother would probably be hard on them and hard on me. So I went to what I knew best, and that was information in books. My reasoning was that even though I didn't know about my dad and my grandparents' past, I at least had a starting point. So that's where I found Bunseng's book. I was in the Twin Cities in St. Paul, and I went to the Hmong ABC store, which is the first Hmong bookstore in the nation. And as I was perusing the small store, I ran across Bunseng's book. I picked it up, read the back, and I was like, ooh, pretty exciting. As a Hmong American, all I had ever heard of the war was the Hmong fighting in Laos with the CIA, fleeing across the Mekong, and American GIs in South Vietnam. I had never heard it any other way. So I bought the book, and I finished the book in 3 days. Of course, it did not give me any insight into my past, my parents or my grandparents, but it gave me insight into another side of the war that we, as Americans, would never hear about. As Americans, we hear war stories of other Americans and American military troops, but we rarely ever hear stories of a war-ravaged country and its people. Growing up Hmong, it is implied that there is an ethnic divide when it comes to Laotians and Vietnamese. Myself, being a first-generation Hmong American, it was very confusing because I had never had contact with Laotians or Vietnamese until I learned about the war, but still it was confusing because I did not fight the war and they did not fight me. But the divide remained. After reading Bunseng's book, I had confirmation that not all Laotians were out to get us, and communism is not as simple as we were taught it was. Bunseng writes of his experience, but he also writes of the wrongs that other prisoners endured. It seems most of his friends that he went to school with in France were put into education camps, as he did. He meets 3 of them in his book, at least 3. He writes of meeting a man who had fallen in love with a communist president's daughter and arrested because they thought he was going to run away with her as part of a CIA plan. He writes of the time when he and his fellow prison mate secretly witnessed 2 guards taking turns raping a female prisoner with her own baby in their arms. His book, I, Little Slave, is a testament to 8 years of wrongful imprisonment and cruel and unusual punishment, and of other prisoners who were wrongly imprisoned. He gives his voice to the people who have passed on or are not strong enough to speak up. And just so this doesn't get too depressing, he also writes of the good stuff: burning leeches off his body, eating crickets, snakes, and rats, pouring battery acid onto an aching tooth, right? And being attacked by a swarm of bees. People in front of you is definitely a badass. I introduce to you Dr. Bunseng Khamkeo.
Thank you very much for Jean's introduction and also your introduction. And I am very touched by what you said about your own story. And I think every Laotian refugee, I think, has a story to tell, I think. So now, tonight, I'm here, and I want to thank University of Wisconsin to invited me, to give me this opportunity to talk about my prison life experience in a communist country, Laos, which is Laos. And I would like to educate educate the American audiences as well. That because why I said so, because many Americans still do not quite understand what was exactly going on in Laos at that time. Because as you know, Laos was named as a secret war in Laos. So many people do not understand. But I don't want to talk about that period of the story. I only want to talk about after the Vietnam War was ended. Okay. So I want to start from after the Vietnam War ended. At that time, I was a student in France. I got my PhD in political science. And then when the Paris Accord signed in Paris, I went back to Laos to help Laos rebuild national reconstructions because of many years of warfare in Laos. And then, as you know, after 1 or 2 years, Laos became a communist country. But I still stay in Laos. Why? Because as a young man at that time, I was idealistic. I thought maybe the peace will come to Laos, but in reality it's not. And because of Vietnamese back, Laos was fought. Laos became a communist country, as well as for Cambodia also became a communist country. And I still decided to stay in my country. Why? Because I love Laos and its people. And also, I guessed or I understood that someday this regime would go away. It was my belief because of my political science background. I understood this communist regime did not work if you want to. So I stayed there. It doesn't mean that I was for the regime. Okay. As you suppose you are American people. Okay. Suppose you do not agree with your government, but still you stay in America because you love America and you love American people. So you stay. It was my situation at that time also. I love Laos and I love its people. So I stay. It doesn't mean I was pro-communist, for the communist regime. It was my conviction at that time. But things turned out to be not good for me. They put me in prison for crime I did not commit. It was a long story, but I don't want to go to it in detail. For example, in this book, the cover of my book is a release certificate. In here, they did not mention anything about my wrongdoing, if you want to. Only one paper saying that now you can go home after 7 years and 4 months in prison. Go home, that's it. So this is my story I want to tell about at that time. And I want to tell you, during all 7 years, I want to tell you about prison condition. During more than 7 years, I was always hungry. I had almost nothing to eat. Okay, and I wore handcuffs for 1 year and a half. I could not take a shower. I could not go outside of the prison camp either. And I cannot have any medical care. Okay. Several times I was almost die, if you want to. I had several diarrhea, and I have many disease, tropical disease, but I still can stay alive. I have no blanket. Why I talk about blanket? Because the place I was, they put me, was very, very cold. Okay, so I had almost nothing to wear and no blanket. And I have no mosquito net. Why I mentioned mosquito net? Because as you know, in Laos, we have many mosquitoes. And these mosquitoes carry malaria. Okay? And I want to tell you another thing, which is they always disturb my sleep. Before they interrogating me, they poke, because I have a cord attached around my neck. They pull the cord every hour, I think, at night, like this. They disturb my sleep. Then after one week, I realized that, maybe they want to disturb my sleep before they interrogated me. As the Nazi, they have used this technique to their prisoners. And then I changed my sleep pattern. I did not sleep at night, and I sleep in the daytime, so I can avoid this disturbance. Okay? And then, after that, after 7 months, after 1 year and a half, they allow me to go to work. I worked in the forest for many years, okay, but very, very hard work. Sometimes I have to carry the wood on my shoulder from this mountain to that mountain, which was not easy at all, because every day I was very hungry, and physically I was very weak, so I could not do all these things. Okay.
Bunseng, could you tell us how much rice they gave you? Like, can you show us how much rice they gave you?
Maybe only one handful of rice, sticky rice they call. Only two handful of sticky rice per day, that's it. So you can imagine, only 2 handful of sticky rice, and nothing to eat with rice. Okay.
And
so,
how important was salt?
The salt, I want to ask you, what is the best food for eating? Do you know? Can you answer to me? What is the best food? Huh? Yeah, of course, salt. Yeah, for me it's salt. Maybe for many people, it's not salt. It's meat or fish or other things. Okay, but in my situation at that time, salt is the best food to eat with, because I had nothing to eat with rice. They give us only a little bit salt every day, So salt is the best food to eat with rice for me. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Physical. Those are physical torture. The second torture I want to say is psychological torture. At that time, I could not have a correspondence, no mail with my family. My family cannot send me any mail either. Okay. One day, I asked the chief of the prison, couldn't I send a letter back home just to tell my family that I am still alive? And the chief of the prison was surprised. He said, how come you dare ask such a question to send home a letter? Because in prison, you have the Communist Party, who is your father, and you have the communist government, who is your mother, who already take care of you in prison. So you don't need family. Wow, terrible. You have no family in a communist country, okay? You have only the party and the government who are your father and your mother, okay? No male.
One thing, before you move on, I'd like to read an excerpt from the book. And you actually talk about prisons in America.
Yes.
He says, I was angry and jealous because American prisoners can have family visits, write or call home, read newspapers, and watch television. They can play sports, receive medical treatment, and get 3 square meals a day. They even get clean clothes, have heat, and can learn a skill that will help them later on. But still they complained because their poor living conditions were a violation of basic human rights. Compared to Asian communist prisons, American prisons sounded like paradise.
Yes. Each prisoner costs around $30,000 per year for taxpayer in America. And we had nothing, okay? And now I want to say about no appeal, no lawyer in a communist country. I cannot have a lawyer, I cannot do an appeal, no way. I said it's the party who decided everything, okay? I understand why in a communist country has no lawyer. Because they say communist country is a classless society. It means everyone is equal. So you don't need lawyer. In a sense, they are right. If they see things under the communist classless optic, they are right, okay? Cannot talk to other inmates. I cannot communicate. I cannot talk to other people in the same cell. In a house prison, they call this. Around 50 persons live together. But we cannot talk to each other. Of course, we still talk, but in secret, okay? Cannot write or read newspaper. We cannot listen to the radio. We cannot, if I have a pen, they discover I have a pen, a blank paper, they will kill me because we cannot have a contact with the outside world. And I had to do my confession by writing. It means I have to confess my crime. Okay, even though I did not have crime, but I have to say yes, I am anti-communist. Yes, I am anti-American. Yes, I am anti. I don't know, capitalism, for example. This one is very dangerous for my life. Okay, suppose I said, yes, I am anti-communist. Yes, I am pro-America, for example. And then they have the written document, the written paper, so they can kill me legally if you want to. Because I already say I was wrong, which I was not wrong. I did not against the communists. I did not dare to act against them, okay? So they forced me to do confessions. It was very, very painful for me to decide to be or not to be. That is question. So it took many days to think about the question, yes or no, yes or no. Finally, I said no. If they wanted to kill me, that's fine. Because really, I wanted that they kill me also is better, because you didn't know when they will release you. Okay? So still, and then I thought, no. It's against my conscience, against my dignity also. No, I cannot do that. And then I feel, no, I cannot confess this. And
I'm sorry.
Yes.
How many times did they want you to write your confession?
I do not remember well, but anyway, at least 6 or 7 times. But anyway, I turned in the paper, always the same, I'm not wrong.
Every time you turned it in, it was the same
Yeah,
story,
the same
the truth.
How can I, of course it's always the same story, because they only one truth. So only the same story. I say, no, I'm not wrong. No, I'm not wrong. Okay.
Right, in the book, a guard comes to you and he wants you to write your confession.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, write your autobiography beginning from age 8.
Yes.
What we're most interested is your relationship with the Thai reactionaries and revisionist Chinese and Lao resistance movement,
Yes.
which he was never a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted him to lie and not tell the truth so that they could use that against him.
Oh yes. They want me to say yes. I was for Thai. Yes, I was for China, because at that time Laos and China were not in good relations, So they want me to say yes. I was for the exile politician also, but I did not say yes, because if I say yes, they will kill me right away. No problem.
Right, and then after 3 times, after you wrote the same thing over again,
Yes.
he said to you, why did you write such a foggy tale? What's all this stupidity about you refusing to make your confession? Do it over. This time, tell me about your connections with Bangkok, Beijing, and the Lao resistance movement. Confession, I pronounced carefully. Yes, a full confession, he said. The next day, I wrote the same thing I'd written before, and I handed it over to Master Bo Pat.
Yeah. The same. What do you want me to write? Because there's only one truth to tell, so I only say yes. Okay. And brainwashing, capitalists and Americans are evil. Every day they brainwash us, Americans are evil, capitalists evil. We are going to build a society where money doesn't exist, something like that. Everybody is equal. No superior, no inferior, no big boss, no slave. But they forced me to use the word "I little slave." Only in prison they use this word. Of course, during all this more than 7 years, after some physical torture, physical psychological torture, of course, I was very, very depressed. Of course, I wanted to suicide many times, but only I did not have a plan. That's it. Okay. So you can ask me, for example. So how I could survive, even though I live in this situation, very, very tough situation. I can give you some reason that kept me strong. The first one is the love of my family. Okay, with love, I think we can survive. We can overcome any difficulty in life. I believe in love. Second one is my political education background. The communists, they say that our communist regime is the best in the world. As you remember also, when Khrushchev, the number one of Soviet, many years ago at the United Nations annual assembly. Gorbachev, he took off his shoe. Do you remember? He took off his shoe and he hit on the table. He said, "Our regime will bury you." Yeah, he said so at the United Nations. Okay, and all these communist councils, they always say their regime is number one, and their regime will last for 1,000 years. They said that. So I remember also Hitler has said something like this also. Our Nazism will last for 1,000 years. Yes? Hitler said so also. So the communists, they say so also. Our communism will last for 1,000 years. And I thought to myself, 1,000 years. I wish I could live to, I'm not to 1,000 years because I cannot, you know. I wish to live as long as I can, just to see which system will win, communism or capitalism. But I don't have to give you the answer. You give the answer yourself. You can give the answer. Who win? Okay? So that is my challenge to them. It's about my character also. I understood that, as you know, in any communist country, when the party and the government put you in jail, it's forever. No way you can get out of the prison. Why? Because they said that they have the right, they have reason to put you in jail, you know. So if they release you for nothing, so it doesn't work, you know. So you have to be in jail until you die in jail. So I understood this. Okay, you want me to die in prison, but I don't want to play your game. I don't want to die in prison. I talked to myself. The day I went out of the prison, that day I will be the winner. So I talked to myself like this. I challenged them to be witness, and I want to be witness also. To be witness, I can read you a passage about what my feeling about witness. Do you want to read it? It doesn't matter.
Sure.
You can read. 293.
293.
293, yes.
Oh, but now
No,
I had a new fear.
no.
No?
Again, here. Yeah, okay.
Oh. I asked myself whether I was afraid to die. What would happen when I departed this life? Would it hurt? I could not answer this question, but somehow I knew that I would eventually find myself in a peaceful place. I also consoled myself with Buddhist philosophy. Nothing lasts forever. Destiny will come when it will come. Everything that exists is impermanent, like the leaves that fall from the trees. People are born and people die. Along with sunrise, there is sunset. For each beginning, there is an end. How can there be birth without death? How can there be sunrise without sunset? How can there be a beginning without an end? Death is natural and inevitable, an omnipresent part of life. Once I understood this, I no longer rejected the gift of life. After all these years of observing the most appalling acts of systematic brutality, I concluded that the fear of dying is more horrible than the event itself. But now I had a new fear. Having witnessed all the atrocities that communists had perpetrated, I became afraid that I would die before I could tell the outside world what I had seen. Deep in my soul, I had come to understand that if someone witnesses a great wrong and fails to speak out, he loses his place as a righteous man. So I found my reason to survive and the purpose for my existence, to bear witness. From now on, I would pay careful attention to the words of these extraordinary prisoners. Each had his own irreplaceable piece of the story to offer. Many voices had already been stilled. I resolved to survive so that I might one day speak out and testify on their behalf.
That is my feeling at that time about meaning, if you want to, meaning of my life, okay, to be witness. And I want to talk about also about humor helped me a lot to survive. Many humor also in this book, even though it look like a sad story, but it's not humor. Okay, maybe you can read some passage about
The bees?
so many, yeah, the bee, about bees. Okay.
This is about bees. On another day, the camp authorities sent me and 7 other prisoners to the forest to cut tree branches to repair the prison camp's long spiked fence. When we finished cutting the branches, I began searching for a vine to tie the sticks together, and suddenly I stumbled into a beehive. I retreated quickly, but it was too late. The bees swarmed around my head. I flailed at them with my hands, but they came at me so quickly that I could not see. I ran blindly for my life. They stung me everywhere. I felt sharp, needle-like pricks in my face, and I pulled my sweater up over my head. My face was safe, but now the bees stung my belly. I slipped my sweater back down to cover my stomach, and they stung my head again. I hid my head with my cap, but they attacked my hands and neck. Somewhere I had read that 200 bee stings would be fatal. The swelling could cause the heart and lungs to shut down. I was terrified. I cried out desperately for help and kept running. My cap tumbled off, and my matchet fell to the ground. I made it out of the forest and reached the road. The bees were still swarming around me. My cries woke a guard who had been napping in the elephant grass. Seeing the cause of all the commotion, he panicked and cried out, "Oh hell, don't come my way. Run back to the forest or jump into the pond."
Hold on, stop. Okay. The guard told me to jump into the pond. Okay. But the water was very, very cold. So how can I do it, you know? So I did not. Okay.
I had no intention of running back into the forest because there were still hundreds of bees there and the pond offered only pneumonia. I could hear the bees buzzing wildly around my head, and I did not dare look at them. I continued to run as fast as I could. After about 10 minutes, I grew exhausted, and my breathing became labored. And finally, to my infinite relief, the bees stopped chasing me and disappeared. My whole body was a jagged wall of pain from the bee stings, and I longed for my wife and children. Without bothering to pick up the bundle of sticks and leaving my matchet and cap in the forest, I walked slowly back to prison camp. Now that the danger was over, the guard walked behind me laughing.
Yeah, that's some humor. I still have other humor also in here. Okay, I don't have had time to tell you all these things. Okay.
The other story that makes me laugh is a story about the monkey.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, if you want to.
I wrote it down somewhere. One of the I guess like the higher ups of the guard had a monkey for a pet, and he gave it to one of the prisoners. And the guard's son was actually called C.
C, yes.
And Bach is actually a word. What does it mean?
C is a Bach is a, it's difficult to translate. But you can say, I don't know, very difficult to translate. But you can see, if you like someone, you can say Bak Si, or you hate someone, you can see Bak Si also. Bak it means 2 cents, you know. But
So it's kind of
love
like,
or hate,
like sarcastic.
It depends on the context.
So they tied a rope around the monkey's neck, and they marched it around calling it Baxi, Baxi, and they were laughing. And then the guard found out that they were calling the monkey that, and he goes, "Why did you name that monkey after my son?"
Because his son is a C also,
Yeah, so that was one of the humorous parts in the prison. You talk about your family a lot. I know, but can you tell the audience, how did your wife deal with you being away for so long?
Yes. Of course, I did not have any contact, any news from my wife for more than 7 years. And after that, after I was released, she told me it was very, very tough for her also, even though she was not put in prison. As you know, in any communist country, okay, the prisoners suffer a lot, of course, but it's the person who is not in prison who suffer the most again. Okay, my wife could not work. She had not a permit for working. He cannot have the paper to buy rice in the state store, for example. He cannot get medical care. He cannot almost get nothing. So it was very tough time for her. Okay, and also the police in the neighborhood harassed her a lot and come to see my wife. Oh, you can send food to your husband. Of course, my wife believed this policeman, and sometimes she sent things to me, but I have never received. They took everything, the police, for example. So it was very tough for her. Of course, he was very depressed also, but still he believed in me. He wanted to stay. He wanted to fight for my release. Okay, and when I was released, some people told me that Bun Sang, you are a Superman. You are a hero. I told my friend, no, I am not the hero. The hero is my wife. That's it, yeah.
I want to read a passage from your book about when you finally were able to smuggle a letter out to your wife, and you received a letter back from her. It goes, Vieng had remained faithful to me since my arrest. She had learned from my colleagues about Sampavan Inthavong's misconduct at the Lao Mekong and filed a petition to the president of the Republic requesting an investigation into my case. And this is the guy that framed Bun Seng. How brave she was. In my absence, Vanasak had become the man of the house, his oldest. Alun had learned to write. Pallavi was doing well at school, and Vilai Hak could pedal a tricycle and speak in full sentences. I yearned to be with them. For a brief moment, I felt terribly guilty for leaving my family all alone, but I quickly pushed the feeling aside, reminding myself that I was not to blame for things that were beyond my control. False guilt was self-destructive and dangerous. The news from my family heartened me. My wife and our children loved me and waited for my return. I vowed to reinforce my determination to survive, to deserve their love. I promised myself I would be stronger and more resolute. Before tearing the letters into small pieces, I kissed them fervently. Then I tucked them into my tobacco tin and covered them with tobacco. If the guards searched me, they would think they were cigarette papers. These shreds of paper were my only tangible link with home. Even though I felt that Vieng was near me in spirit, I missed her terribly. Yeah, that part really got me right there.
Thank you.
Because before, your hands were shaking, and you read them over and over and over. I mean, I couldn't imagine the feeling of, that overcame you when you read those lists, because it had been like 4 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it had been like 4 years he was imprisoned. Bunseng, can you tell us about the title? Why is it called I, Little Slave?
Before the change of regime, it was a monarchy system. We use I, little slave. In Laotian is Kanoi. So I translate from Laotian to English. In English, instead of I, so in Laotian is I, little slave. Okay, this how can I say, under monarchy regime. Okay, I, little slave, to show the politeness, to show our reference to higher class people or elder people, for example, or people who are in position, good position. Okay, but in the eyes of a communist, they say I, little slave is a term is too low class. So in our society, communist society, there is no class, only one class if you want to. So we are equal. So they ban this I, little slave. They only say I. Okay, but now when I was put in prison, they told me to use this word I, little slave when I talk to the authority of the prison. I, little slave, instead of I. They told me that now you are second class, underclass if you want to, because in this society there is no class. But now you are second class of the Laotian communist society. So they told me to use I, little slave. That is why I use this word I, little slave, to say contradiction if you want to. You said you have no class, but now you have another class, underclass.
Yeah, that's really ironic because
ironic, yes.
It's supposed to be in a utopian classless society, and then in the prison you have to say I, little slave.
Yes.
When you're talking about yourself.
Very good point.
Yes. We were talking about before that in my history class we were talking about Marxism, Karl Marx. And what really surprised me about Karl Marx's theory about socialism is that proletariat is a term for the working class, is a socialist term for the working class. And his theory is the working class will eventually rise up and take over the industrialists, which are the capitalists, the people who make business and hire people to work for them. And it was interesting to me in history class because in Laos, communism, socialism, to this day, it has only worked in countries where they're very poor, peasant class mainly. And the thing about proletariat, the term proletariat is, it means working class, but in a poor country like Laos, there is no working class. Everyone is a peasant. And most people, they work for themselves. They don't work for these giant, huge capitalists that they say are out there. So it was very interesting to me that it can't work in Laos and in these small peasant countries because there is no working class. So what is your thinking on that? I mean, like how do you think it makes sense for them?
What you said, I support you, everything you said. But anyway, don't ask too many questions about communism. Why? Because everything they say is wrong. Okay? So I don't want to answer your question. Because everything they say is wrong. They say that, I said earlier, they want to build a class classless society. It's very nice philosophy, the speaking communism. I will support them, classless society, if it work, okay. As I just met a new friend from Minnesota, we talked about this, okay. He said that, I quote what he said, okay. He said, communism is a perfect system, but it doesn't work. Thank you, my friend. Communism is perfect. I agree. But I add one word, but it doesn't work. That's it.
There's a part in the book, in Wasa here, there's a large Hmong population, and I just want to touch on that for a bit. There's the one part in the book where you write about, you're looking through the walls, and you see that they had brought in new prisoners. And these new prisoners were actually Hmong guerrilla fighters. And you talk about them in your book. Let me find it. This is when Bun Sing is talking to one of the Hmong prisoners that are in his prison house. I asked in a low voice, "Who leads these operations?" The Hmong replied without hesitation, "I don't know who is in charge of military operations along the Mekong River, but in the northern region of the country, our leader is General Vang Pao, who lives in the United States. Our guerrillas have fought against the communist Lao and Vietnamese troops since 1975. We want to live in peace. That's why we die for it." Having answered my question, he asked me to bring him the bamboo chamber pot. He relieved himself and then went on. If Hanoi didn't give aid to the government in Vientiane, am I saying that right?
Vientiane.
Yeah. The Laotian resistance would win, he explained. I was anxious to hear more, but I feared our conversation had already gone too far. The Hmong guerrilla and I could be executed for such talk. I, the very least, could be accused of seeking outside news. Reluctantly, I ended the conversation. Time passed, and the rainy season arrived with its blustery winds and drenching downpours. One by one, some of the Hmong guerrillas died. It was no surprise. Without medical care, mosquito nets, or blankets, and forced into a starvation diet, they could hardly be expected to survive. The protracted suffering of these brave Hmong warriors increased my obsession with death, and I was paralyzed by the waves of anger and revulsion that swept over me each time each prisoner died. Day after day, I listened anxiously to the dreadful coughing of an inmate with tuberculosis and watched his body writhe uncontrollably. Soon he would be gone like the others. Now to me, when I read that passage, it's like it means a lot to me because I myself am Hmong. And when I don't know how you yourself feel about it, but it seems to me that, the Hmong prisoners that were in the prison house with you, they resembled, a freedom, that they fought for it, and it could possibly be won. And then with each one dying, to you, it was, to me, it seemed like to you that the freedom of a democracy, of a democratic Laos died with them. Do you think that was how you felt about that?
I don't quite understand what you want to say.
Because it seems like, you say that one by one they died, and because of these, the suffering of these Hmong warriors increased my obsession with death. I was paralyzed by the waves of anger, revulsion that swept over me with each time another prisoner died. And maybe you weren't specifically talking about a Hmong prisoner, but just with each prisoner dying, it seemed like maybe like a part of you died with them, like
yes.
part of the freedom that you wanted so badly.
Yes, because I always knew that Hmong people were involved in democracy movement since 75. Okay, so I understood that these people really fought for democracy, but the government, that is why the Lao government target the Hmong people a lot. The government know very, very well that Hmong people, when they fight, it is a fight to death for these people. So that is why they want to, how can I say, kill if you want to, kill all the Hmong people, even today, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I just want to open it up now to questions, if you have any.
Hold
To the audience?
on, yeah.
No?
Before you, and I want to tell you one thing. It's not very easy to talk about this book because there are several themes, okay? But I want to tell you only the climax of this book is what? Even though I talk about I little slave means I is my story, but in reality it's not my story. Because for me, suffering has no frontier, suffering has no race, suffering has suffering has no, I don't know, I don't remember, doesn't matter. Suffering has no frontier, no race, no nationality, okay? Suffering is suffering. So I compare my suffering to other countries' suffering, and then how I feel at that time. Maybe you can read it from page 220. So I talk about universal suffering is if you want to, 220 from here. Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Wait, which one?
Why no? 220.
20?
Yeah, 20. Yeah. 220. Yes. Why? No? Yeah. From here. Hold on. Please imagine that you are in a rainforest country. Okay. It was raining, and after rain there is a rainbow. Okay. So you imagine this scene, and then this is my feeling about suffering, universal suffering.
While I was still hypnotized by the marvel of the rainbow, I was overcome with a strange, delicious feeling of joy. I could hear bullfrogs croaking, ang, around me. Like any Laotian who hears frogs singing, I longed for home. I leaned my face up against the gap in the logs overlooking the grass and tried in vain to locate the frogs. I couldn't see them, but I could still hear their sonata. Then, from under the sleeping platform, crickets began their brittle, crick, crick sounds, as if they did not like being ignored. In the distance, the bamboo groves swayed, making a gentle swishing sound, sha, sha, sha. While drops of rain dripped from the straw roof onto a piece of tin, producing a tin, tin, ton, ton, tin, ton sound, like someone striking notes on a piano. Moved by the majesty and joy in this music, I wedged my hands out through the logs and collected some raindrops. Then, as the music grew louder and louder, I splashed the rainwater on my face. The music seemed to grow closer all around. It was under the sleeping platform, in front of me, behind me. It seemed that all of nature was weeping for human suffering, and that I would hear this lament only once in my life. I had never heard anything so beautiful. I had a sudden, powerful sense of being reborn and granted a new confidence in life. Why question suffering? Today, suffering was present, and tomorrow, suffering would be among us again. Only the form of suffering would be different. In one brief second, I felt my own suffering mingle and fuse with that of the whole world, and I knew that my fate was not written in stone. I was a prisoner, but prison was just another challenge and another way of living. In spite of the suffering and misery it brought, prison could be endured, and I knew I could survive. Peace of mind had returned to me, and I felt lucid, serene. With this discovery, my pain, sadness, pessimism, depression, guilt, and fear vanished. To be alive was marvelous. I had only to be patient.
Yeah. So this is my I compare to my situation to other countries' sufferings. So it means the suffering has no frontier, no race, no nationality. Suffering is suffering. Okay, and before ending my presentation, I would like to tell you that this book, even though I tell my story about all these awful things happened to me, but still I forgive these people who did wrong to me. Okay, and my message is to tell the government in Vientiane that I hope the first generation of revolutionary are dead. But the second and third generation are in power. And I hope they won't do wrong thing to other people. This is my message to them, if they understand. And I just, before we start this presentation, I talked to another gentleman about what is the situation today in Laos. He told me that economically it's getting better. Politically it's slow and slower again. So that is why. So I want to tell you that today human rights issue is still a burning issue. And now I want to, what I do today is about human rights. I have no intention to overthrow the government in Laos. No, I only want to do human rights. Okay, and today the government say, we respect the United Nations chart about human rights. Okay, I salute you. You want to do human rights. Me too. We too. We want to do human rights. And we want to help these people in Laos to do human rights. But I can tell you that they cannot do human rights. Why? Because these people, they are not powerful people. Everything is decided, make the decision in Hanoi. I have to tell you. Okay? So these people, they are not powerful. And these people are oppressed people also. And I believe strongly that they want to be independent also, but they cannot be independent. Only exiled people can help them to be independent. That is my message. Thank you.
I guess if anyone has any questions.
I do.
Okay. I'm just get a microphone.
Announced before, that we'd be holding an open mic session, but we want to capture your comments on mic so that we can have a videotape. You can access that on our website shortly. In a few days, Chris usually gets things done. So just go to www.WIPPS, Wisconsin Institute of Public Policy and Service, and you will see a videotape of tonight's proceedings. Also, please plan on going across the way. We have some punch and cookies for those of you who would like to stay and chat with
Do you understand?
Were there any Americans being held in the prisoner camps that you were at?
American people?
American GIs, you mean?
Help who?
American GIs, American soldiers.
Were there any American soldiers who were held as prisoners?
Oh, help in prison. Okay. I have not seen any, no. I have not, no. Anyway, I think all the MIA, they say like this, MIA, I think they are sent back to Hanoi, to Vietnam to help them. Not in Laos if they have any. But personally, I have not seen any, okay? Yes?
Man up here.
I just wondered if the teachings of the Buddha are in your philosophy to a great extent.
Gene, I don't think the microphone's on.
Yeah. You talk about
Are you a Buddhist?
I was raised as a Buddhist, but I am not practicing Buddhism. But I respect any religion in the world because I believe that any religion teaches people to be good, not to kill, for example. But in here, I would like to tell you that to me, Buddhism is not religion. Okay? Why? Because Buddhism has not mentioned the word God. Okay? So to me, Buddhism is more, if you want, a way of life or a philosophy, if you want to.
If I understood, I think you said that you studied in Paris
Yes,
before you went back to Laos.
yes.
You are a world citizen. Are you now living in the United States?
What?
Do you live in America?
Oh, yes, I live in America, yes, yes.
And how long have you been?
Around 20 years now. Yes.
Your English is beautiful,
Oh, thank you,
very descriptive.
thank you.
Did you learn English as an adult?
In high school, in high school, maybe, I don't remember, maybe 1 hour per month or 2 hours, no, 1 hour per week or 2 hours per week, that's it. It was not very good, my English. And I did not have any opportunity to speak in English. But after high school, I couldn't read in English. I could write in English, but speaking is different again. Even today, my English speaking is not very fluent. My children, they speak much better than I do. But writing is different. Writing, because it's so easy. You make a mistake, you can go back. Writing, but speaking you cannot. So I don't know. Yeah.
And was your family able to come with you, or did you have to separate again from your family in order to come to America and
Ye-
then bring them later?
Yes, separated first. My two sons went to a refugee camp in Thailand first. Why? Because my wife was very, very afraid that they would took my two sons to do the military service. At that time, Thailand and Laos had a small war between two countries. So the government takes always the feast of the reactionaries, they call like this. Okay, so they will took my son first. So my wife understood this, and then she let my two sons escape from Laos to Thailand in a refugee camp for, I don't know, maybe at least 1 year, and they flew to to the Philippines for 6 months, and they came to California. Okay, and when I was out of the prison, of course, my two sons were already in the Philippines. Okay, and then I after that, I applied my passport to come here, but I did not apply my passport. To tell you the truth, I bought a passport. I paid, okay. These officials, they are corrupt, so I paid. I did not dare to apply for a passport. Why? Because if they knew me, oh, you apply a passport, so you want to go to other country, so they will put me in jail again. Because I have to stay there, I did not dare, so I bought my passport. So I cannot say if I am legal or illegal. I don't know. But anyway, I am American now. Okay. And now all my family are in America, of course, in Vancouver, Washington State now.
So you came as like a passport to America?
Yes.
Your family came as a refugee?
As I said earlier, my two sons are refugees. We are the immigrant. Okay, and then I applied for my asylum visa, asylum status. Of course, they agree right away because U.S. Embassy in Vientiane knew very well about my case.
Okay, I have one more question. And in your book, did you mention when you were arrested and when you were released? How long you were in?
Altogether, it's let's say 7 years and 4 months.
4 months.
Yes.
What year were you?
Arrested in 81 and released in 88.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question up there, Jean.
Hello. I have 2 questions. The first question was, do you know what province you were imprisoned at?
Yes. It's close to Vietnam, North Vietnamese border. They choose a very good location, because the prison is between like a sandwich, okay? The prison is in the middle. In front of the prison is a river, Nama River, in France, very large. So you cannot swim across the river. And behind the prison is North Vietnamese. So you cannot escape, How can you swim across the river? How can you go to behind, which is Vietnam? Because in Vietnam, prison condition is worse than in Laos, So I have no choice, okay? It's close to North Vietnamese borders, yeah.
All right. Now, my second question is because of, I guess, the state of politics in Laos right now, you writing a book like this, I believe it was published in 2006.
Yes.
Do you have any fear or repercussions from any of the communist Lao living in Laos or here in the U.S.? Do you ever worry that someone might read your book and they might be from the Communist Party?
Do you understand?
Yeah, are you worried that when you write the book, that people from the Communist Party in Laos would read your book, even people there or people here?
Have you ever been threatened, in other words, by someone else who's
Oh.
read your book?
Threaten me or threaten them?
You, threaten you.
Oh,
Writing
yeah,
bad about
yeah.
Laos.
Even before, it means when they learn that I was writing a book, several people, my friends, who were in the government, they call me indirectly if you want to, not directly, okay? It's this Asian way of doing things, indirectly, okay? advised me, advised me, why you write a book? It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Now everything is okay. They advised me. In French word they call conseil d'ami, friendly, conseil d'ami, advice of a friend, something like this. Wanted to stop me, to discourage me. And I told them, I have to do this, my job, okay? And when my book was published, someone called me again, but always friendly, advised me again. Oh, you should not do that. You cannot go back to Laos. Okay? He told me, now you finished now. You cannot go back to Laos. And I told them, I don't want to go back to Laos because Laos is a communist country. If I want to go back to Laos, that they must be liberal, a free country and not a communist country. And since then, they did not say anything officially, but they cannot say officially. Because I have already talked on the radio, on Radio Free Asia. This book put the government in a very difficult situation now. They cannot deny, they could not condemn me either. Say, oh, Bun Sang tell lies, for example. So I said, this situation like someone who eats something, there is a bond in his or her throat in here. He cannot throw out, and he cannot swallow it. He cannot now. They do not know what to do now, because I tell the truth. And they cannot deny the truth either. So they did not make any comment on the book. They only use other people to discourage me. Yes, several times.
All right, like I said, my only purpose for that was I think this movie won an Oscar back in 75 or 77, 79 probably, The Killing Fields. And if you've seen that movie, I believe the actor was killed in the early 80s by, supposedly, he was going to a store and he was shot and killed at a store, supposedly with a drive-by or some kind of robbery gone wrong. But according, like you said, within Asian politics, it's very different. People talk and say things, and I said, I heard for a long time it was because of political backlash from Cambodia, talking about Khmer Rouge and escaping from Cambodia. And like I said, I've heard that other people had him killed because he portrayed Cambodia in that light. And so I'm just wondering, have you ever had any threats, or do you ever worry? Because, like I said, I haven't read the book yet, but I went through some of the excerpts and I read an interview you did with the Vancouver Times, and like, for myself, I just worry a little bit, and I just wondered how you thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Are you still trying to have laws change their political structures, like to this day?
What?
Do you want Laos to change their
Is
political
he still
structure?
trying to?
Are you trying
Oh. I think the word trying to is not a good word to use. Why? Because they have no choice. They don't try to want to change. They have no choice, Because now, since the collapse of the former Union Soviet, Laos became a orphan, they call orphan, orphan. It means no parents now, Laos.
Orphan.
Yeah, Laos is like an orphan. His grandpa is died. So Laos had no choice. He had to do some reform, but very slow. That's it. But why these people? I don't think they want to change, but they have to change. That's it. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes.
Yes.
I think we'll have this one be the last question then.
It's less a question than something for you to react to. Laos is a very young country. 85% of the people in Laos have been born since the war ended. And you would think if you went to Laos, you'd have lots of opportunity to talk to people who participated in the war or who shared your experience. But more and more, it's hard to find old people. And the young people don't relate to your experience because it, for them, was long before they were born. So and they don't study the history in their school. So it's interesting to go there and find that people don't have any knowledge of this. Hopefully, your book will be sold in NGN sometime, and that will be a contribution to teaching the people in Laos about their own history.
Yes, I agree with you totally. Now the young people, yes, as you said, they didn't know about all these things. But anyway, it's good to educate them. Anyway, it's good to let them know about this. And also what I want is, I target the leadership if you want to. I want them to understand that Laos is not independent country. So you have to, if you are nationalist, so you have to disagree with or cancel the treaty with Vietnam, for example, 1977, which give almost every power to Vietnamese in every field. For example, this treaty can last for 25 years, okay? And after 25 years, the treaty can be extended for 10 more years automatically. So it means Laos is already under the influence of Vietnam. So I want these people to understand you have to be independent. And also young people to understand also communism is not good. It doesn't work for human being. That is my message also.
And I would like to say that you're a wonderful exemplar, Dr. Kamkeo, of the resilience and the indomitability of the human spirit.
Thank you.
And I do believe that is because I see the manifestation of such, not just courage, but compassion underlying it all. I think your message of human rights applies to everyone. And we appreciate the time you've taken to speak to us about that. And I'd like our audience to know that we're very grateful that Dr. Kamkeo can stay overnight at the Jefferson Street Inn and visit our campus tomorrow, where he will have the opportunity to speak to the young people he invokes so marvelously right now and give them his message. He'll be meeting with our student leadership program and students from the Multicultural Resource Center. So the message will endure and your words will echo long after you have returned.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please join